Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Customer Strategist webinar, The Future of Customer Experience. Where do humans fit in an increasingly digital world? I'm Liz Glagowski, Editor-in-Chief of the Customer Strategist Journal, and with me are a host of experts and customer experience gurus that I'm very proud to have on the call with us today. This program will be hosted by Teletech Consulting and Customer Strategist, and will be moderated by my good friend Stephen Walden, who is a Director of Customer Experience at Teletech Consulting. Our guests today are Don Peppers, the founding partner of Peppers & Rogers Group, and now with CX Speakers, as well as Joe Pine, the co-author of The Experience Economy and other wonderful books on experience, and Olaf Ehrmans, a researcher and strategist focusing on artificial intelligence, customer experience, and customer goodwill. So welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on a video webinar, which will be very exciting, and we're blazing a new path in the webinar world. So thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, Liz.
Good. Hi, thanks.
So today, Stephen is going to lead our discussion on the idea of customer experience and where we are now and what the future might hold for customer experience. So with that, Stephen, I wanted to just hand it over to you to start our discussion and see where it takes us today.
Thanks very much, Liz. Well, it's great to have such luminaries of customer experience here today. And we're going to basically divide the agenda into two. We're going to spend half the session on the current state of customer experience, getting some opinions on where we're at, what's gone right, and what's gone wrong. And then we'll move on to the second half, which is looking at the future of customer experience and getting some visionary thoughts and where it's going and what CX practitioners can do to move their own customer experience programs and agendas along. In the first session, we're just going to have a little bit of a little round table, and I'm going to ask each of these speakers and experts just give a couple of minutes on their initial reflections on what is the current state of the customer experience market. So I'm going to ask you in turn, just for a couple of minutes, to talk about that. And then we'll get into a free-for-all and see where we go with that and see what key opinions we can get out. I'm going to start with Olaf. So I've known Dr. Olaf Ehrmans for a little while now. I think you position yourself as a cognitive psychologist, don't you, Olaf? So we're looking for some deep thoughts and opinions on this. So not to put any pressure on you, but you've been elected to go first. So Olaf, just a couple of minutes just on your reflection and answer the question, what is the current state of the customer experience market? Thanks, Olaf.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you for having me. Yeah, indeed, I have a background in cognitive sciences, and I'm specialized in loyalty and value in ongoing service relationships, albeit digital and face-to-face. I'm currently a customer strategist at Serintel. It's a Pennsylvania-based startup company that develops artificial intelligence and middleware to transform service touch points and into relational encounters in real time. So that's what I'm currently doing. And indeed, if you ask me about the current state of customer experience, I think there's a lot of reason for optimism. I think that customer experience management and design is getting rather grounded. So rather than in previous times that we were focusing merely on brand values, and so we're getting more into sequences of touch points and interactions. So things are getting more sophisticated, which is good. So more methods come available for companies. Real-time analytics is good. Internet of Things, multi-channel integration. I think we are making a lot of progress over there. CX as a marketing core, and we see more and more companies actually wanting to differentiate themselves based on CX. So that's all positive. And I'm still very much impressed very often every day about the new features that come available, supply chain technologies, integrated content, and so on. So, you know, when you find public transportation schedules in real time, including the delays in GPS maps and so on, that's all fantastic technologies that are under our fingertips today. So that makes me rather optimistic about the current state of customer experience. I'm rather pessimistic, though, about the idea that customer experience can be delivered. I really am not keen on the word delivery because simply the customer of today co-owns the experience in real time. I mean, when you take your friends out for a restaurant experience, they own the restaurant experience, and basically the restaurant is only there to facilitate that experience, and cannot claim to be in control of delivering an experience. So I don't like the idea of CX delivery, but more a co-creation. I also think there is an exaggerated focus on ephemeral emotions. So everything that is short-lived, so impress or make people feel appreciated. All these short-term things, it's very hard to create long-term loyalty and value from that. So I think there's a kind of an exaggerated attention and interest in emotions. And I think we should just go to a balanced state of emotions, behavioral aspects and cognitive aspects. I also am not really, what I don't really like is the idea that, or the assumption that customers can be engaged all the time. So it seems as if customers can be kind of milked and have unlimited energy available for companies, which is really not, how customers think. Our brains are not made to be engaged for too long. So we should be way more balanced in our appeal to customers' engagement potential. So that's basically it. And also, maybe last remark is that I'm not a big fan of believing that brand relationships are built on strong CX. I think it's a two-way effect. Relationships can be built actually without a base experience. So relationship processes are distinct from customer experience processes. And actually when relationships are built, it means that these people have different perceptions of customer experience. So I rather try to see customer experience and customer relationship as two interdependent but yet distinct concepts.
Cool. Okay, thanks very much for that, Olaf. I'm now going to move to Don. And Don, I think you wrote your book, Customer Experience: What, How, and Why Now. I think it came out in the last year or so. So
sure.
I guess you have fresh opinions on the current state of the market. So how would you position it?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with Olaf, or at least I did right up until the end of your remarks, Olaf. I do think that the customer experience and the customer relationship are highly related. But I guess it depends on kind of our definition of experience. And I think it's an important thing that we ought to get straight. And let me just give you my take on customer experience first. I don't think for the vast majority of companies that customers are seeking an experience per se. They're seeking to solve a problem, or as Clayton Christensen would say, they're seeking something to do a job for them. They want a product or a service that does a job, right? And if that job could get done without their ever buying from the company providing this experience, that certainly would be preferable to the customer. The customer would just like the problem or the job to go away. So I think as a practical matter, I think the definition of customer experience that I would prefer is something that's a little more pedestrian. I think of the customer experience as sort of the sum total of every interaction that a customer is having with a brand over time. And let me just focus on that for a second. I say interaction because I don't think the customer experience includes a non-interactive type of event. In other words, watching a commercial about a brand is not part of the customer experience. I think that's just a practical distinction because if otherwise, experience is everything. On the other hand, the problem that companies have is that if they have the wrong definition of experience, if they think of experience as something flashy and jazzy, like you sort of mentioned, Olaf, something that can be orchestrated and so forth, there is a role for that. But what customers first want, before that role has any salience in the customer's mind at all, what customers first want is that the problem is solved, that the need is met, that in fact, what customers truly want is what we call a frictionless experience. That is, an experience that reliably solves the customer's problem in a way that the customer doesn't have to pay attention to, or make amends for, or make corrections of. Let me give you an example of what while I agree 100%, Olaf, that the technology around delivering customer experiences has dramatically improved, and that customers have access to so many more things now, and the technology is very useful. I think customers' expectations of businesses have grown more rapidly than the business's capabilities to meet those expectations. And I think over time, what has happened is customers are increasingly impatient with businesses' lack of capabilities and lack of attention to their experience. Let me just give you one very quick example, then I'll turn it back to you, Steve. Think about the last time you had a problem with a product or a service, and the first thing you did, you went online, you went to the company's website, and you try to figure out, what am I doing wrong? What can I do differently? What can I do? And you couldn't figure it out on the website for some reason. It wasn't there. The answer wasn't. It wasn't obvious. So you, after 30, 40 minutes on the line, you can't solve the problem. You pick up the phone and you call the company. And they have no clue that you were just on their website. Probably, even if you had logged in as a customer, they have no clue. But there are technologies available immediately to fix that problem that companies have not adopted. If I was on your website through your app, the app itself ought to have a click to call button. You could have proactive chat windows open up. And more companies have that now because that's the cheapest thing you could do. You could have a call me button. So when I want to talk with somebody, I press the button, call me, and I give you my number. And then when the person at your company who calls me, they call me, they have access to my clickstream. They know what I was working on. Or you could have a temporary phone number. At some companies, when you see the toll-free number to dial for reaching the customer service line, that number is unique to your web session. A company like that might have several thousand of those phone numbers. They cycle through. The phone numbers are valid for like 4 or 5 hours at a time. When the phone rings to that number, we know who's calling, and we can link the call to the website. These are simple technologies, and the overwhelming majority of companies don't have them. I rest my case.
Okay. Thanks very much, Don. Okay, Joe, how are you going to give an answer back to that? Again, Joe, you originated I think the key seminal articles there, the experience economy, welcome to the experience economy back in the late 90s. You've seen it grow and change, I guess, over the last nearly 20 years. Got some slightly different views here. I guess Olaf is leveraging on relationship, Don, more about frictionlessness. How would you state the position from your point of view about the current state of the customer experience market? Joe.
Well, thanks, Steve. I do like both of those concepts, in their place. The whole focus that has happened over the last decade or so on CX, on customer experience, is because, in fact, of this shift into the experience economy that we first, again, documented a couple of decades ago, where we've gone from an economy based off commodities, the agrarian economy, through an economy based off of goods, the industrial economy, through a service economy, and today we've entered an experience economy. And the most important thing to understand this is that experiences are, in fact, a distinct economic offering, as distinct from services as services are from goods. It's basically when you use goods as props and services as a stage to engage each and every person in an inherently personal way, and thereby create that memory that is the hallmark of a true distinctive experience. And what's happened is that as we shift in experience economy, is that goods and services have been commoditized, where they're treated like a commodity, where people really only care about the price. And so what happens is that companies have taken this term of CX, of customer experience, and what they generally mean, and it's somewhat in the definitions that Don gave, but I think he's a little bit better than this, but often, not always, but often what people mean by that term is they mean, let's make things nice and easy and convenient. And those are all great things, and I think that that's maybe the definition of frictionless, is nice and easy and convenient. And those are great things when you are manufacturing goods and when you are delivering services. but not when you're staging true distinctive experiences. The best that those words will get you is a good, in fact, they get you a great service, but still only mere service. If you want to create a true distinctive experience, then nice is nice, but you do have to create a memory. You have to engage people inside and create that memory within them. And when we talk about making things easy, right, that's where often we want to routinize our processes so they are as easy and simple as possible. But that often gets in the way of treating everybody in front of you as the individual they are. I totally agree with Olaf that experiences are co-created, because where do experiences happen? They actually happen inside of us. It's our reaction to the events that are staged in front of us. So you need to reach inside them, create that inherently personal experience, because no two people have the same experience. Even if they're in the same place at the same time, because they're different people, they have different experiences. And convenient is really the antithesis of what I'm talking about with the true distinctive experience, because convenient means let's get in and out. Convenient means let's spend less time with the company. And with a true distinctive experience, time is the key. It's the fact that people actually enjoy the time that they spend with you. They want to spend time with you, and they view that as time well spent. With increasingly commoditized goods and services, and with most CX programs, what customers are looking for is time well saved. They do want it frictionless. They want to be able to get in and out. They want their problem solved and so forth. And that's great if that's what they're looking for. But if they're looking for an experience, it's not about time well saved. It's about time well spent. And so it's very important to understand these really two different strains of experiences. The original one that it's about the shift in experience economy, and then again what most people mean by CX in terms of coming up with being nice and easy and convenient and making things frictionless and so forth.
Very good. Thank you very much, Joe. Okay, so now it's a little bit of a free-for-all, if I can, and we'll see how we manage this one. I'm getting a wide diversity of views here, obviously, as I expected in many ways. I think my first point, there's a very clear difference. So Olaf, I'll come to you in a second, but first of all, Don, it sounds to me, listening to Joe, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here, that actually, Don, you're talking about service quality more than customer experience. How would you relate to that?
Well, I think I'm talking about customer experience with a small e, and Joe is talking about it with a capital E.
Or the big X. I like a big X.
Okay, big X. But I think the customer experience management movement has kind of co-opted the X. That's the problem.
Right.
When you see the term CXM or CXM, or the name of my company, CX, we're talking about customer experience. We're really talking about small e customer experience as a practical issue. I would argue that even though I never expect to be entertained at Bank of America, when I interact with them, either in their branch or online or whatever, I still have an experience of dealing with them. And that's the small e experience that we're really talking about. And while I respect and admire Joe's work, and I think his book, The Experience Economy, was a groundbreaker, and I do believe that as the world becomes more and more frictionless, increasingly consumers really are seeking out the experiences, capital E, because they're very valuable. That's what stays in your mind. That's why you go on a vacation, or the experiences are magnify your life. I get that. But when we're talking about customer experience management, what we're really talking about, I think, is all the practical issues involved in a company trying to see their business through the eyes of the customer and experience the products and services and interactions that the customer experiences, and try to help manage that process, recognizing that obviously every experience is unique and personal, no question about that, and experiences are co-created. A good experience is as much my responsibility as a customer as it is the company's responsibility as a company. Recognizing all that, I think there are still a host of practical issues involved in businesses trying to treat customers better. I mean, if I had one goal in my life as a professional, it is to make the world safe for customers. And that's what I'm trying to do. I think the world could be a lot safer for customers among companies that have access to terrific technologies. Customers expect them and they don't get them. And so on the whole, even though the vast majority of senior executives think their own company delivers above average customer experience, the vast majority of customers think their company delivers a below average, below expectation experience. So,
and as usual, Dodd, we're in violent agreement.
Yeah, exactly.
Disagreement. Okay, cool. So I just break. Sorry, Joe.
Well, that one of the key things to understand is experiences. The big E experiences are built on top of services, which are built on top of goods, which are built on top of commodities. And if you have lousy goods and poor service, you're never ever going to rise to that level of that big E memorable experience.
Exactly.
And so it's very crucial that companies do work on what you're talking about. But then
I violently agree with you.
Right, because that gives them space.
Both are right.
They can come up with that. So yeah, you're not going to be looking for a big E experience from a Bank of America, but in fact, you go to an Umpqua Bank, right, out in the northwest of the country, and it is a bank that you're going to enjoy the time that you spend with them because of the cafe they put in there. So you go to a Capital One 360 cafe where the bank is a cafe, then you're going to enjoy that time, and it rises.
Wi-Fi and everything else. I've been there.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to bring Olaf in at this point. Olaf, Big E, Little E, what develops the relationship?
I just let the Titans kill each other, and I don't know, it's fantastic to hear, because if we just compromise, what they're saying is that indeed that Don and Joe acknowledge that an experience is layered, and so that you have a basic, a small E, big E, and that they are interdependent of one another, and so that they mutually. Don will always acknowledge that and I remember your big work like Harvard Business Review. Are you ready for one-to-one? Identify, differentiate, interact, and customize, and so on. The classics. It means that you still need context of a customer in order to be able to to solve his or her problem. And so it means that there's these layers. And I actually dare to say that there's a third layer, and that actually brings the relationship. So over time, because the experience is also cumulative over time. If we achieve to have loyalty and ongoingness, it means that anytime you walk into an encounter or a touch point with a company, you take the luggage, this whole background, into this next moment where you maybe meet a system or a trainee who is not aware of actually what you have already experienced with the company in the past. And I think a critical element is that when we look at kind of old marketing way of thinking is this idea of needs, and the needs that need to be met, because it assumes that people know their needs up front. And that is one aspect. And another aspect is that if we acknowledge that customers only have the capability to pay and to experience, to buckle up, relax, and do nothing and pay and be happy and talk to your friends positive about it, which is a really very narrow model when you look at customers being educated, having creativity, having time, having money, having networks, and so on. So customers bring an array of resources into an experience which you definitely need to integrate with whatever efforts that you're putting them up with. So the interesting thing is that what I say is that all this context and using the capabilities of customers becomes an additional layer that small x and big X need to, it's the RX. It's how do you contextualize small experience and big experience. And I think that we here, the three of us, represent really very harmoniously those three pillars, because eventually they will come together in something that we call customer experience. Eventually we are all talking experience, but we acknowledge that there are layered interdependent. So they are kind of manageable each in their own right, but they can't do without the information and the experiences in the other layer, because they mutually inform each other.
But you realize, Olaf, that you just related relationships and experience. You said the relationship is the cumulative customer experience over time, which I think is a terrific definition, by the way. That's a great definition.
And also, sorry, apologies, Tom. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, Martha Rogers and I are releasing the 3rd edition of our textbook on managing relationships, customer relationships, next year through Wiley. And we've retitled it The title used to be Managing Customer Relationships, a Strategic Perspective. The new title is Managing Customer Experience and Relationships, because the discipline of customer experience management has become so central to the whole tenets of CRM and or whatever you want to call it, one-to-one marketing, customer-centric marketing, customer centricity, whatever you call it, this technology-enabled pivot by businesses from being purely focused on their products and services and outbound stuff to being focused on their customers and the inbound signals from customers, I think is really critical.
Okay.
You know, maybe if I may, it's because the three of us, what we are saying in a way is that the old Kotler way of thinking, and with all respect for, one of the biggest names in marketing ever, was the idea that marketers said we have to identify a need, then we make a promise, which is like brand promise, and then we do consistent delivery, and basically we thought that everybody and every system in our company represented the brand, like that we had this uniform front that we push towards the customer. And I actually think today, 2016, when we have all this interactivity going on, I don't think that customers are more demanding in the sense that they want to have control. Yes, they want to have clarity. I'm not sure if they want simplicity, which we come to later, I think. But definitely, they want to be part of an ongoing conversation about how we're going to do this together. So we are in this together. And so how can we see what I actually really need? And if you are smart as an organization, then I can expect more. So customers actually adjust to the level of expertise that they face or confront with in the company. So the customers are really smart in seeing like, what are you good at and what I'm good at, and how can we integrate that into, an enjoyable and a memorable experience.
Could I just continue this conversation?
Yeah, sure.
Quickly, Steve? I agree with you for the most part, Olaf, except that I always take a breath when people say customers want this, customers want that, customers are smart.
Yeah.
Not all customers are smart. Not all customers want to have a conversation. If you look at personality types, some kinds of customers want to have your best recommendation. That's what they're going to do. Some customers want to have choices. Tell me the three things, I'll choose. Salespeople know this. So I think what's going on is that this technology that's empowered businesses to treat different customers differently has raised a whole host of these issues, where we're now looking at customers under the same microscopes that we used to only look at products and advertising messages under, right? So we're paying attention to it.
But just to tap into that, I fully agree. But it is important then to acknowledge that it's not just that customers have needs and preferences, but they're also like variable in terms of their involvement and the energy that they want to spend with you. And, and it can be chronically and acute, because I can like you very much, but today I don't have time for you. So there's situational variation and chronic energy, but it's also about capabilities. So, do I want to put my own, do I just want to lay back and sit and relax, and or do I want to make a party out of this together with the waiter in the restaurant? Okay. And that's exactly what you're saying, Don.
More violent agreement on my part.
Sure, okay. Well, we're trying to get some disagreement. Joe, you just wanted to know your perspective on this debate. Do you violently agree?
Well, I the one thing I disagree with Don on is like his use of all these different terms. One-to-one, still beautiful. I've been Don's biggest fan for 25 years. And a lot of what we're talking about, in fact, goes back to the original work we did together, Don. You remember for the Harvard Business Review article, do you want to keep your customers forever? Where we defined a term that I still use today, which is a learning relationship. So ideally, what you want is a relationship that learns, that grows, that deepens over time, and ideally, to Olaf's point, it knows you so well, it can anticipate when you have time and want to do something involving, and when you just want to get in and out because you don't have time today. And if we can figure that out, I think the basic idea is that every interaction, Don's term, right? Every interaction you have with a customer is an opportunity to learn. And the more you learn, you can better customize what you do for them using techniques of mass customization. And the better you customize to them, the more they're going to benefit. And the more they benefit, guess what? The more they're going to interact with you. And therefore, you have another opportunity to learn. And so you can develop this virtuous cycle, which I think is the definition of what customer centricity really is that you have an individual relationship around an individual customer. You're not thinking about markets or segments or niches or personas. You're talking about individual living, breathing customer. And we encircle them by understanding them more and more over time. And whether they're in the market for a physical good, a intangible service, or a memorable experience.
But does this really relate to all types of goods and services? I mean, I'm just thinking, nobody's ever asked me about what I want as a customer. I go in, I buy a can of Coke, and I just want a can of Coke. So in a lot of circumstances, is it not the case that I just want it easy, I just want deliver, tell me what I want, don't give me options?
Well, often yes, but if you want maybe you don't want a can of Coke, maybe you want to go to a Coca-Cola Freestyle machine, which in London you can get at a Five Guys hamburger joint, by the way, if you've never seen one. So you go to a Freestyle machine, you put your cup in there, and when I do it, I want not just Coke, I want Coke with lime, right? I love Coke with lime. And I start to fill up my cup with Coke with lime, and I get it about 80%, and I stop, and I switch over to Coke Zero with lime, right? So I get 80% regular Coke and 20% of diet Coke, basically, so that maybe over time I can start to wean myself, off of that, and have less sugar. That allows me to customize it for me. Now the problem is the Freestyle machine does not have a way of remembering who I am. It does not know what my standard order is. Doesn't allow me to have an app that I walk up to it and say, hey, Joe, would you like your normal, or would you like to switch it up today? That's the sort of thing that we need to do.
Okay.
Well, maybe just to, if I may, because it is really important what Joe is saying there. So if one thinks simple, like I just want this, that statement does not exist. You have been drinking a lot of Coke over your lifetime, Stephen. It's not just I want a can of Coke right now. You have a whole history with Coke, and indeed, like tapping into that. Coke has never said to you, like, thank you, Stephen, for being a lifelong.
Look forward to it.
And maybe they, I don't know if they should, but important is indeed exactly as Joe says, a relationship is complex by definition. Sometimes you want the same, sometimes different. It's like your wife, So and so there is. You need to be in real time with the customer. And then we go back to service dominant logic of and engagement logic by Roderick Brody and Steve Vargo, is that there are no sales. There is always needs are developing dynamically. Your habits are developing dynamically. The level of interaction is developing dynamically. Sometimes you want something different, the same. You want to be on your own. You want to be together and so on. And so and therefore there is no simple solution if you are in an ongoing relationship. And that's exactly what Joe.
Okay, well, I have to
hold off. With things are going on, they get developing better and better and better, as you say. But if the company that is selling to you is able to participate in that
discussion,
virtuous cycle, as Joe calls it, wouldn't you say that your experience gets easier and more frictionless? And
that's it.
Isn't it easier now to continue to deal with Joe's company than it would be to try to reteach somebody else what you've just taught him?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. But eventually, I agree with simplicity, because we all want to bring closure to things and say, now we have it the way we like it. But we know that we have to go through, deep water sometimes to get there. And there's turbulence in relationships. And also when you're growing in a loyalty program, the frustration of being in the silver tier, you got out of the bronze tier, and you need to go into the gold tier, and they still don't recognize you, and all these kind of things. But eventually we just want to be, in close harmony. And that's what we call the meta experiences. And what you want is eventually talk with the customer about, hey guys, did we get it right with you? And have a sensible, which is a largely cognitive thing. Like, do we have like a sensible relationship together? Is it simple as you want it to be, but still does it address all your, hidden and more overt needs? Yeah.
Okay, Joe, do you agree with simplicity?
I agree with simplicity at a couple levels, and then not at a third level maybe. But as part of a small E customer experience, yes. I mean, simple is great. It's frictionless, and again, recognizing experiences built on top of them. Those service components you want to be simple. To stretch our banking example, and Stephen in London there, I'll give you another example of go to the Barclays feature store and be able to design your current account, right? You're going to be able to design from the various modules of what they have to be able to design a current account that is in fact customized to you. Now, each of those modules, we want that to be simple. We want that to be frictionless. We want them to be able to be brought together in that way. When you get to big E experience, as we've been calling it, when you get to the point where you want to spend time and you value the time, simple generally is not what you want. You may want it from a cafe. You may want it from, well, the classic example of the Cheers bar, you know, where everybody knows your name, right? There you want that sort of simple experience. But anything else, you know, simple means very flat experience, means no drama, nothing much happening. And with a true engaged experience, you in fact want to have a lot of drama. You want to rise up to a climax of the experience and come back down again. And that's the case. Okay. Again, true distinctive experience.
Don, can we get to the big E just by being frictionless, simple, easy?
No. In fact, the subtitle of this webinar is something like, where do humans fit in the digital world? You know, you cannot get to the big E experience simply by being automated and simple and remembering customers and making it frictionless. No matter how trustable you are, no matter how reliable, relevant, and valuable you are, the four components I talk about in a frictionless experience. Reliability, relevance, value, and trustability. Those four components. No matter how much of that you get, you still don't create the big E experience unless you can make that emotional connection of some kind with the customer, where the customer really does get engaged with, and I with apologies, Olaf, I know that that's a hot link term for you, but I'm thinking about big E experience is one where actually the customer is going to remember it because he's paying close attention to it, because he's involved in it, because he or she is entertained or gratified or amazed or has some sort of emotional connection with the brand / product / service there. So yeah, you definitely have to. Okay. You have to be simple. You have to be frictionless first. Then you can be.
Stephen, I must insist because I just like the right way.
One comment from Olaf, particularly as it mentioned emotion, and then we go to the future.
Eventually, things need to be simple and converge and so on. And back there is a huge complex that we can consider, but eventually it needs to be simple. But loyalty is never built on rewards and discounts alone. See, there needs to be
absolutely.
Relationships are complex by definition, multi-pillar. Second, if you collaborate with customers, there needs coordination, who's doing what and who's doing what well and so on. And by definition, collaboration also among these in the company is always, it requires working together, building a team, same like with the customer. After all, it can become easy and simple. But, and even, I think the last point that I wanted to say is in relationships, it's not just what you deliver, because that's simple, but also the motivation with which you deliver, because there's great companies like Ritz-Carlton Hotels, it's fantastic, but eventually they may deliver the same experience to everybody. So you always wonder, like, how special am I really? So customers over time are not just looking at the what, but also at the why of what companies are doing. And there's complexity in interaction, and you need to elicit that and talk things through with customers.
You had me up until the Ritz, and I saw Joe's eyebrows raised too, Olaf. The Ritz delivers the best experience for you, Olaf, which is different than the best experience for Joe or for Don. And that's why it doesn't deliver the same experience to every customer. It delivers a unique experience to each customer, really.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're now going to move to the second half. What is the future of customer experience? And we're going to have a little different order than last time. So Don, if you can just take a couple of minutes of what you see as the future of customer experience.
Well, I think the future of customer experience is one where companies take seriously customers' rising expectations of them. Every time you get served well by Amazon or Ally Bank or you have a great experience at Umpqua, your expectation of the next bank or bookstore or online vendor that you deal with, or your expectations of the next restaurant you step into increase. And the problem that most companies have is they don't recognize that they're on the downward slope of these rising expectations. They're not keeping up. They think they add technology and therefore they're better. But you know what? In the customer's eyes, they're declining. They're going backwards because they're not keeping up with customer expectations. So in my view, the future of the customer experience management discipline, if I want to think about it that way, now I'm using small e, I think the future of that discipline is very bright. I think increasingly, I think there are, to put it selfishly, I think there are decades of consulting still out there for companies that simply, where the management wants to make the experience better, and they find that they're conflicted with their alignments don't add up. You know, they reward people for the wrong things. Their capabilities don't exist because they can't even tell when a customer was on their website and they called in. Their mindset is bad because they're as a wise sage once said, you can't write a line of business code that requires employees to delight customers. The employee has to want to delight the customer. All these are obstacles that companies face today. And the closer we get to this discipline as a real discipline, I think the more realistically companies are tackling these obstacles.
Fantastic. Joe, would you like to talk about what is the future of customer experience for you?
Yes, I would, Stephen. Thank you. And first, I would agree with Don and on the Little E experience. And in fact, you know, when you talk about that companies basically are degenerating, they're commoditizing themselves. The loyalty cards with discounts is a key way that companies commoditize themselves rather than truly add value to the relationship. Mm-hmm. But many consumers, they actually want that. They want goods and services to be commoditized so they can spend their hard-earned money and their hard-earned time on those experiences that they truly value. You know, again, looking at time well spent. So in terms of Big E experience, let me go in a little slightly different direction. Is what you're increasingly going to see actually is that because time is so important, because they want to get to the position where customers value the time with them, what you're increasingly see, and have been for a while, but you're increasingly going to see in the future, is more and more companies actually charging for time. Rather than charging explicitly for the good or the service, or in addition to the good or the service, they're going to charge for time, the time the customers spend with them. You saw it with my favorite example, American Girl Places. You know, opened up in 1998, basically a doll store, where inside of them you had a 150-seat theater with a live stage production around the dolls and their place in American history, and they charged $33 for that experience. They have a cafe where they charge $20 for tea, $22 for lunch, $24 for dinner, as a you know, for a grown-up dining experience. They charge for a photo shoot, for a hair salon, doll hospital. All of those, you can walk into American Girl Place and spend hundreds of dollars without buying a thing, but then you're going to buy more than that as memorabilia. We see increasingly restaurants that are actually charging admission for the experience. First one I saw is Trois Mec in Los Angeles, that charges an explicit admission fee and then the food is subsumed. Or Grant Anschotz's restaurant in Chicago Next, where you go online, you get a ticket for a particular seating at a particular time, you print off the ticket, you have to bring it, right? It's like you're going to a Broadway play, the food is free. It's only the drinks that are in addition. There in London, in the news last week, is there's a Zifferblatt Cafe I've been to in Shoreditch area in London, where they don't charge for coffee or the pastries, whatever, they're all free. They charge for time, right? 6 pence per minute. And as long as you're there, they're charging for that time. Again, why? Because that's what customers value, is that they value the time that they spend with you. I can go through numerous more examples, and increasingly that's what you're going to see. And everybody else is going to be, you know, basically commoditized.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And Olaf, how do you see the future of customer experience?
Yeah, I'm also rather hopeful. A host of technologies is coming available to lift it to even higher levels. What I really want to see is the marketing function and the strategy function being incorporated in the customer experience. And the only way of customer experience management becoming like CEO territory, which is still the frustration of many marketeers or technology companies, is, you know, that CX often is still considered as a nice to have, which we all know is like stupid. But then at that moment, we need to see to it that market research function, you know, trying to identify customers' needs, that can be part of the customer experience in real time. Taking customer surveys like feedback. Well, you can do it after the customer experience. You can also do it in the customer experience. So feedback is also a customer experience. What I also want to see is that companies have strategic goals like innovation, for instance, or budget cuts and so on, and they can actually use the customers high on goodwill or high, with high customer equity to actually achieve those goals. But again, to do that, these are processes, and these processes are also customer experience. So I want to get away from the idea that people are just consumers of services, products, and experiences. We can actually have customers become co-owner of processes because they are collaborative and co-creative. So you can actually manage the experience together with your company or your app or your systems and your people. But they also can become co-owner of your company. So not just of the process, but really become the capital of the company. Customers who are high on goodwill can fulfill any function. And they can provide feedback and do coaching with your employees. They can co-develop new products with you. They can engage in user communities and so on. So basically, they are the company. Customers are part of your organization. But that, of course, is a whole host of new processes. But altogether, they are part of the customer experience. So I really love this multi-layered vision of customer experience management, and not just like how do we sell, okay, it's a dirty word, but or how do we create experience in the terms of like get people's problems solved.
Okay, thank you. Rising expectations, Don. Creating experiences, Joe, and co-creation, Olaf. Is this just too much for companies today to really handle? Because it sounds like a big piece of pie.
Well, better not be. The thing about business is it gets tougher year after year after year, and only the great ones survive over decades. You have to figure out what are the requirements to continue to advance. You can never sit on your laurels. You can never think that, okay, I've achieved it, this is it, we just coast from here. No, you've always got to be thinking ahead. You've always got to refresh your capabilities. I truly loved what Olaf said about customers are in fact part of your organization. That you need to draw them inside of what you're doing and allow that to take hold, because that's where the innovations of the future are going to come from. Not necessarily being able to ask directly what your customers want, because they usually don't know. Not necessarily pandering to them and whatever they do say, but to understand them away, understand the jobs that they're looking to get done, and what are the new ways that we in fact can service those jobs, fulfill those jobs, and help them get what it is that they need now and into the future.
And Don, rising expectations. So how can a company marry the changing customer, what they need to do now, and it's big legacy organizations?
Well, I think that I really like what Olaf and Joe both said about customer co-creation. And I think it's a good metaphor for what I'm trying to talk about in terms of being with your customer and coming up with their expectations, or rising up to their expectations. The kind of customer who's going to help a business better craft its own customer experience, whatever, is the kind of customer who wants that business to succeed. Okay, now what kind of customer is that? It's a customer who is attached to the business, perhaps emotionally, almost certainly because of convenience and but let me tell you a story. When Martha and I wrote our book, Extreme Trust, we started it out with this story. In the first Gulf War, USAA, which is an insurance company that specializes in insuring the service members and their families, they insured tens of thousands of soldiers who went over to the Middle East during the first Gulf War for an 8 or 9 month stint. And when those soldiers returned, USAA, which built its business around treating members of USAA the way you'd want to be treated if you were the member, that was their mantra. When they returned from the Middle East, USAA voluntarily, at a cost of millions of dollars, without obligation, they began sending out refunds to these soldiers who had been overseas. You were overseas for 8 months. Here's an 8-month refund on your auto insurance. Very interesting. The punchline of the story is that more than 2,500 of these members sent the refunds back to the company. Because they either didn't feel they were entitled to the refund. No, my sister drove my car, or my dad was looking after it, or whatever. Or some of them actually had notes saying, no, I don't need this right now. Just make sure you're there when I really do need you. And the question really is, what kind of company is a company where its own customers are going to send it money to keep it in business? And I think the future of customer experience is a future where more and more companies are going to want those kinds of relationships with customers, where the customer wants to deal with the company, not just to solve the need, but because it's always in their interest to work with the company.
That's true loyalty.
Well, maybe I can make a few bold statements about loyalty, just to kind of capitalize on this on Don's argument. I really think that we are not so much loyal to what is perfect, but we are loyal to what we own. Many of our children and our cars are not perfect, but we like them because they're ours. So where we have control and where we can contribute.
Your children are perfect.
Okay, let's take that like after this discussion. But, no, but it's really fun to see that, in marketing terms, we always wanted to know what people wanted and then to make a perfect delivery or a perfect impression. We need to let go. It gives a lot of burnout in society. So let go of the idea of, perfection, but it also means that customers need to let go of the idea of expectations. And interestingly is when you're by your own as an individualist, then it's easy to have high expectations. Once you are with someone, grounded in the dirt, then it's just like muddling through. So if you have a perfect conversation with customers about, how we can improve, then they're actually happy to accept flaws. I was shocked this morning to read from Forrester that 40% of customers, would consider changing provider if the customer experience was flawed. And Forrester said that and said it can be a signal to either say we need to perfect the customer experience, or it means that we have not built goodwill while delivering experiences, because people high on goodwill, they will tell you this wasn't the greatest experience, but what can I do into it? How are we going to do it next time, and so on. That's also what you do in an educational environment, which is by definition also a relational environment. So this idea of collaboration will also take some pressure away, but not the pressure to, of course, have this conversation about how we can go to the future. Another aspect is that I really want loyalty not to see as an outcome of customer experience, but as a process in itself. Being loyal to your neighbor is mowing his lawn when he's ill. And that is loyalty. See, loyalty is a distinct process. It's not just having this affective bond and being an ambassador of your neighbor. I'm sure that he prefers not you saying that you're an ambassador of his. I'm sure that he appreciates that you mow his lawn when he's ill. So we need to get loyalty grounded and get traction, and it's a distinct process. It is customers willing to assume another role than just the role of paying for an experience that you delivered. And when we say that they want to recommend you, it means that the customer is doing more than just paying. Well, but there's a lot more that customers can do, and not just recommending. So we have always seen customers only in their capacity of paying and referring. And that, I think, is really kind of narrowly sighted.
Okay, so Joe, is this kind of like your emotional absorption, value of time well spent, that getting people engaged in the experience for a longer time?
Yeah, I think it is. I think what most people view and how they measure loyalty is not really loyalty. Loyalty, we're loyal. If we're loyal to somebody, means that we'll continue to buy from them when they screw up, right? Because we're loyal to them. It doesn't mean we'll continue to buy from them because they give us a discount every 10th time, that we do it.
And Joe, what I don't like about loyalty, and it's very often reflected in NPS, we want to have like the best in class. We want to be the best in class. But it basically is always like, I acknowledge that you're the best in class, all things being equal. So we have a lot of loyalty, which is actually conditional on you staying the best, but actually you open a new hotel and by definition, you're best in class. But in 6 months, another hotel opens and you're no longer best in class. So the point is you have actually 6 months to build something else with customers, than being best in class. Yeah, be best in class based on new arguments, based on relational big E arguments and so on.
Don, should we be ditching the term loyalty and starting to talk about trustability? You said trustability is the new black, I think, in your last book. Is that what we should really focus on?
At the risk of sounding like too much of a professorial pedantic. I beg to differ with the definition we've been using of loyalty here, okay? I think there are two types of loyalty we can talk about. We can talk about behavioral loyalty, which is what Olaf and Joe were just both talking about, or we can talk about attitudinal loyalty, which is what having an affection for a brand is and so forth. The thing is, if you want to improve your behavioral loyalty, I have a surefire method for doing that. I can guarantee to improve the average behavioral loyalty of your customers with one action. Stop acquiring new customers. It's guaranteed statistically, your behavioral loyalty will increase because those who are least loyal are the ones who are most likely to leave first. The longer you have customers, the more loyal they are. It's a statistical fact. In fact, behavioral loyalty without attitudinal loyalty is almost not workable. But attitudinal loyalty, as Olaf says, without behavioral loyalty is worthless. So you need both, really. And when we talk about loyalty, I think, again, as a pedantic professorial type that I am, I think it's important for us to get that definition right. I do think.
The rest of us are not pedantic and professorial. I resent that remark.
Not enough.
No.
You resemble that remark, you're supposed to say. One more thing. I wanted to key in on Olaf's very, very insightful point about fallibility in human beings. I think that that's a very essential part of being trustable. I think the subtitle of this webinar is how do humans fit in the next customer experience in the world? It is a human quality to be fallible. There are no perfect human beings. People make mistakes. Human beings make mistakes. In the old-fashioned marketing, marketers never made mistakes. Advertisers always advertised perfect brands, perfect in every way. There was never any admission of error. We're now in a much more interactive world. We have Twitter feeds and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, and people make mistakes and you see them and you broadcast them and they go on, they become trending topics. Any company that wants to have the trust of its customers needs to portray itself as human. And what is the first quality of human? Fallibility. It doesn't mean that you make mistakes on purpose, but when you make a mistake, you admit it and you go forward. And customers, I think, will embrace that. They like that. They want to buy from companies like them that are human.
Well, if you put that back in marketing history, is actually what you're saying is not so much making mistakes, but embracing diversity. Because, when you want to, and it goes with Joe, so when you really want a truly personal experience, the big experience, it means that you're meeting diversity. Everybody is different in a way. And of course, in the 90s, in post-modernism time, we thought that everybody would use the same product, which was, an exciting product in the same way. But that is, of course, we also have different modernity. And that's the 2016 generation, which indeed wants to speak in terms with you and see how can we move something that is like not so perfect into make it perfect together. That's really cool.
So Joe, bring humanity into business?
Absolutely. I love what Don said. Fallibility is a sign of humanity, and humanity is a mark of authenticity. And that's increasingly important in business. We want to buy from the real, we want to buy the genuine from the real, not the fake from the phony. And I think that's increasingly important. No matter how we interface, even this, this webinar right here, right, is incredibly technological. We are in 5 different places using in different times, at least 3 different time zones, 4 different time zones, using the height of technology to be able to come together here. But yet we are bringing our own humanity in this. We have ourselves been fallible in this. I'm not going to tell you when you were, but I know when I was. And I think it's very important to, right? It's incredibly important to be human in a digital age, even when the medium is technological.
Okay.
But even in a traditional view, that brands were always engaging in brand extension. So you try to, if you are good at something, you try to become good at something else with the same customers. But that by definition means moving into more vulnerable domain for a while. And that is also in product portfolio things. And that is exactly what, that's the entrepreneurial spirit that you want to have as a company with your customers together. And it's really cool.
Okay. Cool. Very good. Well, thanks everybody for that. I think what we'll do now is we'll move to the roundtable summary and then close with Liz. If that's okay, Liz? Yeah. So we're going to start off with a couple of minutes. So we spoke a little about the current state of customer experience, Joe, and how we see the future. Just a summary of your thoughts on customer experience for a minute or two now. Thanks, Joe.
Well, I think everybody faces a strategic choice about whether they're going to stay in manufacturing goods or delivering services, or they're going to rise to the proposition that we can and should stage experiences for our customers. And they're not even mutually exclusive. You can do each one of those. You go to a Disney theme park, you pay an admission fee because it's an experience. You have a wonderful time with your family, with loved ones. You remember that for not just days and weeks, for months afterwards, months and years. But then you also came home with Mickey Mouse watches, and you also bought food services and photographic services and so forth. They can all be in that mix together, but it is important to know when you're doing each one. And when you are selling goods or services, then the small e customer experience is in fact very important. You want to make that frictionless. You want to make it seamless. You want to make it nice and easy and convenient. But recognize, as business gets tougher every year, you go that route, you will be commoditized. Eventually you will be commoditized. So I do encourage companies to think about rising to that level of big E experiences, really recognizing that they can be in the business of staging experiences with the dramatic structure that means of being not just nice and easy and convenient, but being memorable, being personal, and having customers view it, in fact, as time well spent. And then you'll be economically rewarded.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joe. Now move to Olaf. Your last summary thoughts for a minute or so. Thanks, Olaf.
Yeah, I fully comply what Joe is saying. So the friction and Don's the frictionless part, the truly personalized part. Although I would not confound memory with loyalty. There's a lot we recall that we're not loyal to, but indeed we should go to relational encounters where we truly take the full context of customers. But on top of that, I really hope that we will be able to add this cognitive layer, like having the discussion with the customer about the customer experience. So just opening the box of Pandora, our design efforts, everything we have been doing for the customer, so that together with the customer, we can evaluate that. So I think that especially the market research function, the customer feedback function in the future will be fully incorporated in the customer experience process design. And I think that will be really exciting how that is going to work out. Moreover, I think we truly must abandon the exchange logic, like we do something for money and so on. That is really old marketing logic where we do all the work and the customer is just paying. I think we should abandon that. I think we're going to a hybrid environment where staff is being, or systems are being empowered with information about the past, information about the customer in real time. Which is really challenging. So I think, we should not just look at company cultures, but really at how can we bring information and people together in a humanized encounter, which will be really cool. And the role of artificial intelligence in that will be amazing. I don't think that needs will be the building block of marketing in the future. I think goodwill is energy. And if there's energy, we can automatically identify the needs of customers and actually see what they really want to see fulfilled. So I think need identification becomes a part of the customer experience as well. But to do so, you need customers willing to open up. Privacy is a negotiated process. So that is going on. And I really think that the most value both for company and customer are in collaborative efforts. So where really at the time, we wanted customers not to do too much and just sit and relax and say, value was actually defined as what do you get for the least effort possible. I really think that the definition of value is changing towards, effort actually can contribute to value creation. And so there's a lot of interesting stuff coming up, and I hope that we can all work together with the companies and with these experts on, making that tangible and building the methods to implement it. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Olaf. And Don, if you'd like to take a few minutes, couple of minutes to summarize your thoughts. Thanks.
Sure. And if I just looked at the future of the customer experience, I'd have to look at the future of technology and business and so forth. And I think if you step back from what's been happening over the last 20, 30, 40 years with information technology, it's very clear that products and services cost less and less. They're easier and easier to deliver. Automation and algorithmic production processes deliver things for free that used to be cost. I mean, I carry a mobile phone, which is a movie camera, a technology device that I can do all sorts of things with. All that stuff is free. As things get freer and more inexpensive, services become more and more convenient. Life for customers is going to become inevitably more and more frictionless, easier and faster and more connected. For businesses, what this means is that the single most important and valuable asset in this very frictionless, very fast-paced, highly interactive world, the single biggest asset a business has is its customer base. And businesses need to begin focusing on customers as financial assets that basically they represent the future of their company. It's the customer's memory which connects today's customer experience with tomorrow's success of the business. And until businesses really take that point of view and begin thinking of customers as their principal asset, it's going to be dark days until they do that. Well, one more thing. In 1980, if you look at this S&P 500, more than 100% of the S&P 500's market capitalization was explained in tangible assets that they had on their balance sheet. By the year 2010, only about 40% of the capitalization and market caps of the S&P 500 was in the form of tangible assets. 60% was intangible assets, and probably the vast majority of that was in the value of the customer base. Google, $250 billion market capitalization. It doesn't have $250 billion worth of personal computers and ping pong tables lying around its corporate headquarters. That asset value is in the customer base, and I think that's the company of the future. That's the type of company we're going to be seeing, where customers are the principal value-creating asset for businesses.
Thanks, Don. Okay, so I'll just spend a little minute just closing and then hand over to yourself, Liz. So, Don, Joe, Olaf, thank you very much for your time. Very informative conversation. And I think what I was getting out of it was this little E, big E concept going on here, and it's a relationship as well, sort of where they're not in conflict, they're in collaboration, maybe even in co-creation in terms of customer experience. And I think so often there's this dichotomy between, is it frictionless or do we create bigger E experiences? And I think one leads to the other and no doubt vice versa. I'm interested also in the concept of building on top of that, the notion of relationship, which I guess doesn't really, is the new dynamic possibly in this that hasn't necessarily been explored, at least within customer experience world so much. So it is, I guess it can be complex for companies to handle. I think the examples given of success, and particularly examples also from what you're saying there, Don, about the how companies are being currently evaluated, should give an impetus to firms to look at customer experience a little bit more closely, and not just take it as lip service, but it actually means something and is important and critical for the world going forward. So once again, thank you very much for your time. I'll now hand over to Liz to close. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And it was a fantastic conversation, everyone. And what I took away was the idea of collaboration, co-creation to help become more human, more authentic, and then ultimately, Joe, what you said, time well spent, which is a nice way to wrap this up, because I really do believe this was time well spent as well. Thanks again, and we will be promoting this, or we will be publishing this in the Customer Strategist Journal, as well as on the Teletech website and shared across social media. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.